The ganache breaks at 11:47 at night and Kale does not make a sound. He pulls the saucepan off the burner in one clean move, sets it on the cold coil and stares at the surface. Dark at the edges, grainy at the center. The sharp smell of scorched Belgian chocolate rising through the kitchen and spreading across the apartment the way bad news spreads through a room, quietly, completely, without asking for permission. 2 hours of work. Gone. He sets the spoon down on the marble counter. Presses both palms flat against the edge and breathes through his nose exactly twice. Then he files it, calculates the time he has left before his morning delivery window closes and starts moving toward the fridge for a fresh pour of heavy cream. That is what Kale Riven does. He does not stop. He does not fall apart over spilled work. He absorbs the damage and adjusts and keeps going, because that is the only mode of living that has ever kept him standing. He is 31 weeks pregnant, and his lower back has been carrying a deep grinding ache since 3 in the morning that no pillow arrangement has been able to fix. He has a tasting delivery due for a Dior event coordinator first thing tomorrow, dark chocolate millefeuille, a violet and honey and tremet, salted caramel profiteroles in boxes lined with tissue paper that costs more than most people spend on groceries, and none of it is ready to leave this kitchen yet. So he does not have the luxury of standing here in his feelings about scorched chocolate. He wraps one arm loosely under the curve of his stomach and turns back toward the prep station. The living room behind him is quiet. Tablet audio at low volume, some business broadcast, measured voices, the sound of men in good suits discussing numbers in the particular tone of people who have enough money to treat money like weather. His boys are on the couch where he left them. Zion on the left. Malik on the right, 5 years old and already occupying a room the way much larger people do. A steady, watchful quality that sits in both of them like something inherited, like a trait passed down from a source. Kale has spent 5 years carefully not namming out loud. He checks them from the kitchen doorway and then turns back to his work. Hi viewers, if you had spent 5 years building an entire life in silence, disappearing so completely that even your own reflection stopped asking questions, and then one ordinary Tuesday night threatened to unravel all of it, what would be the first thing you would grab on your way out the door? Drop that answer in the comments right now, because Kale Riven is about to find out what he grabs, and the answer is going to surprise even him. For 5 years this apartment has been exactly what he built it to be. Clean, controlled, a space that functions, a kitchen that earns, a life that does not need saving by anyone. He built this from a number in his bank account that used to have 2 digits in it and now has 7. Built it through early crypto positions and a silver allocation that aged well in a pastry business that started as a market stall in Prospect Park on Saturday mornings and is now fielding orders from Chanel, Dior, Tiffany & Co., and a private event firm in the West Village that puts his croissants on tables next to flower arrangements that cost more than his first month's rent in this city. He built it while pregnant the first time, while caring for newborns, while negotiating supply contracts on the phone with one twin on his hip and the other one crying from the next room. Nobody handed him this, nobody co-signed it, nobody stood next to him in the early years and told him it was going to work, and he built it also in hiding, not the loud, panicked kind of hiding, not the kind that draws attention by how hard it is working to stay invisible. The quiet kind. The kind that looks exactly like an ordinary man running an ordinary business in Brooklyn, New York, because that is what ordinary men do. He changed his phone number twice. He deleted every social media account he had ever made before the age of 26. He never registered his business under his full legal name. He chose clients who valued discretion because they were spending their own significant money quietly. He made himself very small and very successful at the same time, which sounds like a contradiction but is actually a precise strategy. Because small enough means no one is looking for you, and successful enough means you never need to ask anyone for anything. The one thing he could not control was his boy's eyes. He is standing at the prep station with a fresh saucepan on the burner when Malik's voice comes from the living room. Not loud. Malik never gets loud when something is catching in his brain. He gets careful, exact, still in a way that is too old for a 5-year-old and has been since before he could properly form full sentences, a quality that does not come from Kale and has never come from Kale, and Kale has never once said out loud where it does come from. Papa, Kale keeps stirring. That man on the screen, a pause, precise, like a child choosing the right words the way an adult would. His eyes look the same as ours. The wooden spoon stops moving. Kale does not turn around yet. He stands at the stove and he makes himself take one full breath, measured and clean, because his body has already understood what his brain is still processing, and his body has gone very cold in a way that has nothing to do with the temperature in the kitchen. Then he turns. The tablet is propped between his sons on the throw pillow. The broadcast is still running. A wide shot of a New York boardroom, floor-to-ceiling glass on the upper floors of a midtown building, the kind of room where the air itself seems to cost something. Men in dark suits around a long table. A financial anchor visible in the corner of the screen, still narrating market projections. And at the center of the frame, seated at the head of that table in a black suit cut so precisely it looks like it was built for this exact room, one wrist carrying a dark leather Hermes band, speaking in a voice that moves through a room the way gravity moves through a space, present everywhere, contested by nothing, Rick's cauldron. Cale's hand finds the doorframe and closes around it. He does not tell it to, because right there on that screen is the face that has not faded in 5 years. The jaw. The stillness, the particular way he holds authority in his body like it weighs nothing, like it is simply a physical fact about him the way height is a fact. And the eyes, pale amber at the center, deepening towards silver at the outer edge, unusual, permanent, the exact same pale amber and silver currently sitting in the faces of his 2 boys looking up at him from the couch. Zion tips his head sideways, studying the screen the way he studies everything, completely, without embarrassment, the way children study things before adults teach them that staring is rude. Then Zion's hand moves, small fingers crossing the surface of the tablet screen toward the lower corner of the broadcast interface, toward a small icon that sits alongside the comment and share buttons in the margin of the live player. Not a comment button, not the share function, a call button. A direct line embedded in the stream interface, private premium, the kind of access that does not belong on a public broadcast, the kind of line that should not even be visible on a civilian device, the kind of line that Cale will spend the next 48 hours trying to understand how it was active and accessible on his second-hand tablet on a Tuesday night in Brooklyn. He moves across the living room, 4 steps, 5, one hand pressed into his lower back, all his weight forward. He is not fast enough, he is never fast enough when it matters. He knows this about himself. He knows it the way you know the things about yourself you have never said out loud. Zion presses the button, the screen shifts. The broadcast feed drops to a small inset window in the corner. The main display goes black for 1/2 second, then it connects. Cale stops moving, both boys look at the screen, and the call does not go to customer service. The first order Cale ever filled for real money came at 4 in the morning, not a gala order, not a Dior contact. A woman named Portia Givens, event planner, brownstone on Stuyvesant Avenue, commissioned through a private referral network he had gotten into by filling 2 free orders for a charity dinner in Fort Greene the previous winter. Portia had called at 11 at night asking if he could produce 60 units of a dark chocolate and praline petit four for a corporate breakfast. She had not mentioned to him until that moment. By 7 the following morning, he said yes. He stayed up all night. He delivered them in a borrowed insulated bag on the G train at 6:45 in the morning with Zion and Malik asleep in their double stroller beside him. 11 months old, completely unbothered by the hour, while he stood in the subway car in his clean apron and tried to look like a man who had this handled. He had this handled. Portia paid him $1,800 that afternoon. He went home, put the boys down, sat on the kitchen floor with his back against the cabinet, and let himself feel it for exactly 6 minutes. Not relief, not pride, something quieter and harder than both of those. The particular feeling of a man who has just confirmed to himself that the exit strategy is working, that the calculation was right, that he can do this. He got up off the floor, made a business plan, opened a separate account. That is what the life Cale built looks like from the inside. From the outside, it looks like success. From the inside, it feels like a machine he is always slightly ahead of, always feeding the next component in before the current one runs out, always calibrating the balance between what he shows the world and what he keeps pressed flat and out of sight. The bakery is not his cover. It is real. The revenue is real. The artistry is real. The $18 croissants that the Gucci crowd comes to his window for on Saturday mornings are genuinely the best croissants available in a 4-mile radius, and he knows this because he has eaten all of his competition. But the bakery is also the visible part of a structure that extends further than most people who know Cale Riven would ever guess. Because nobody who watches him handwrap entremet boxes at a client tasting in Soho knows what his trading account looks like. Nobody who schedules a call with him about a Tiffany anniversary dinner order knows that 3 years ago he took a position in silver futures based on a pattern he identified in the market himself, held it for 14 months through 3 separate downturns while everyone else was exiting, and closed it at a number that added a floor to his financial security he has not needed to touch since. Nobody knows about the crypto wallet. Nobody knows about the second investment account. Nobody knows about the 2-bedroom property in Carroll Gardens he purchased at the tail end of a down market and is currently renting at a rate that covers his own monthly overhead twice over. Cale Riven is wealthy, not flashy wealthy, not the kind of wealthy that announces itself, the kind that insulates, the kind that means when something goes wrong, there is room to absorb it without asking anyone for help. He built that deliberately. He built it because he understood something important about the world 5 years ago, something that the night with Rick's cauldron taught him in a language his entire body understood even when his brain was still catching up. Power protects itself first. And if you do not have power, you build something else that functions the same way. You build stability so complete and so self-contained that the people who might otherwise use your need against you can find no entry point. You close every door. You leave no need unmet. You become the kind of person who does not require anything from anyone, and you do it not because you do not feel things, but because you understand that feeling things in front of the wrong person is a form of exposure you cannot afford. His boys are the one place where that logic breaks. Zion is the one who laughs first in any room. Wide open, no hesitation, the kind of laugh that recalibrates the mood in a space just by existing. He is also the one who will hold a stranger's hand in a grocery store checkout line without a second of awkward calculation, who draws pictures of people from memory that are too accurate for a 5-year-old, who told Cale at age 4 that the man on the television was sad behind his eyes, and was proven right when the news cycle caught up 2 weeks later. Zion feels the room before the room knows it is being felt. Malik is the one who watches, who asks questions that sound simple until you sit with them for a minute and realize they are not simple at all, who built a working pulley system out of yarn and an empty oatmeal container at 3 years old without being shown how, who does not say much in groups of new people, but says everything later at home in bed before lights out, processing the day with a precision that some adults Cale knows cannot manage. Malik is the one who said, last Tuesday at dinner, completely without context, "Papa, why do we not have a dad like other kids?" And Cale had looked at his son and given the answer he has been giving in different forms for 5 years, the one that is not a lie but is not the whole truth either, about how families come in different shapes and how their shape is a good one and how love is not about who is present but about how hard the people who are their work to make sure you know you matter. Malik had nodded, eaten his rice. Let it go for now. Cale knows that for now is a fixed resource. He knows the questions are going to get harder. He knows that one day, not far away now, the answer he has been giving will no longer be sufficient, and his boys will look at him with those amber-silver eyes and ask the real version of the question, the one that does not have a smooth answer, the one that points directly at the door Cale has been standing in front of for 5 years refusing to let anyone open. He tells himself he will handle it when it comes. He handles everything when it comes. He always has. What he does not account for, what no amount of planning covers, is a Tuesday night and a second-hand tablet and a broadcast interface with a private line embedded in it, and a 5-year-old boy who moves fast and presses buttons before the adult in the room can cross the distance. He didn't run from Rick's cauldron because he was weak. He ran because he understood power. He understood it well enough to know that when you are standing next to it without protection, the only rational response is to move while you still can. The question is whether moving was ever actually possible in the first place. The night it happened, Cale wore borrowed shoes, not because he could not afford his own. He was doing fine by then, market position holding, bakery accounts growing, the early hustle starting to pay out in ways that were beginning to feel less like luck and more like earned geometry. But the invitation had arrived with 12 hours' notice through a contact in the food industry event circuit, and the shoes he had bought for formal events were still at the cobbler on Atlantic Avenue getting resold. So he borrowed a pair from his friend Devin Okafor, same size, slightly too narrow, the particular discomfort that sits below the ankle and announces itself every third step, and he went to the gala anyway, the Meridian Society annual gala. Grand Hyatt, Midtown Manhattan. November, the kind of event where the dress code is black tie, and the subtext is money measuring money across the room, and deciding whether to speak to itself. The kind of event Cale had no business attending except that the catering director for the Meridian had heard about his petty fours from Portia Givens, and a referral to this room was worth eating borrowed shoe discomfort for one night. He did not know Rick's cauldron would be there. He did not know who Rick's cauldron was. That is the part of the story people always find unbelievable when Cale turns it over in his mind in the dark of his kitchen at night. That a man who controls shipping routes through 3 eastern seaboard ports and owns more commercial real estate than some municipalities can exist in a room and be completely unrecognizable to a person who does not operate in those financial circles. But that is exactly what happened. Cale walked into the Meridian Gala carrying his business cards and his borrowed shoe discomfort and his very clear professional objective, and he moved through the room the way he always moved through rooms he was new to, quietly, observantly, cataloguing the space and the people in it with the same focus he brought to a new ingredient combination in the kitchen, measuring what was there before deciding what to do with it. He was standing at the window ledge on the north side of the ballroom with a glass of sparkling water and a small plate of appetizers he was evaluating professionally when the room shifted, not physically, not dramatically, just the particular way a room shifts when something with significant gravity enters it, a subtle realignment of attention, a collective tracking without eye contact, the way water in a bowl moves slightly when the table the bowl is sitting on accepts a new weight. Cale noticed it before he looked up. He looked up because the room told him to. Rick's cauldron walked in with 3 people behind him and no one in front of him, and crossed the ballroom without appearing to walk through it so much as let it arrange itself around him. He was not the tallest man in the room, He was not the loudest. He was not performing anything. He was simply there in a way that was completely different from the way everyone else in the room was there. The way a fixed point is different from everything moving around it. He looked up. He found Kale in the window ledge across the ballroom with no apparent effort. Like Kale had been where he was always going to be, and Rix had simply arrived at the point in the evening where it was time to acknowledge that. Kale looked away first. He took a deliberate drink of his water and turned to the window and told himself that meant nothing and went back to evaluating the appetizers. 20 minutes later, Rix was standing beside him. He did not introduce himself. He did not use an opener. He looked at the city through the glass and said, in that low, even voice that moved through a room the way gravity moved through space, "You've been watching the northeast corner of this room since you arrived." Kale looked at him. "You've been watching me watch it." A pause. Then something shifted in Rix's face that was not quite a smile and was more controlled than amusement, but was in the same family as both. Fair. They talked for an hour and a half. Not about money, not about business, not about the kind of subjects two people at a gala are supposed to anchor themselves to. About the city. About what it costs to build something real in a place that is constantly eating the things people try to build. About what it means to be from nowhere and make yourself into something specific, and whether that something is ever actually finished, or whether finished is a line you keep moving further ahead so you have somewhere to keep walking toward. Kale told him about the bakery without using it as a pitch. Rix told him something about his early years without framing it as a success story. The conversation moved the way good conversations move, not toward a destination but through something, opening as it went. Kale knew the whole time that he was in something he should be careful about. He knew it the way you know a surface is hot before you touch it. The information is available before the contact, and the contact happens anyway. Because the other thing he knew, standing at that window in borrowed shoes with his water glass and his professional objective completely forgotten, was that he had not had a conversation like this in 2 years. The kind where the other person was actually present. The kind where being heard felt like a physical sensation rather than an obligation someone was performing at him. Rix walked him to a car. A black car, unmarked, waiting at the curb. Kale had not called one. He did not ask how it was there. He got in. And the space between the gala and the morning was something he has turned over in his memory many times in the past 5 years, with the specific, careful attention of a man examining a thing he both values and cannot afford to look at directly, the warmth of it, the weight of it, the particular quality of being wanted by someone that powerful without feeling consumed by it, which was not how he expected it to feel at all and which made it in the end. Harder to leave than anything cold would have been. He left before the city got light. He found his coat, found the door, moved through the corridor of whatever building it was in Manhattan, down through the lobby, out into the November cold, and stood on the sidewalk in borrowed shoes that had finally given his ankle a small blister, and breathed. And told himself he was fine. Told himself this was a single night, a sealed thing, a moment that would not compound. He had work in the morning. He had a life with a shape to it. He had objectives and a plan and a building business and a clear understanding of what stability required. He got on the subway. He went home to Brooklyn. He never called. He never looked for the number. He buried the whole thing in the part of himself where he keeps the things he cannot use. 6 weeks later, a test with 2 lines told him the night had not stayed sealed. Something had not left with him when he walked out that door. The pregnancy test sits on the edge of the bathroom sink for 4 minutes before Kale picks it up. He does not need more time to read it. He read it in the first 3 seconds. The 4 minutes are for something else, for the particular process of standing in a small bathroom in Brooklyn and performing the exact calculation that his life now requires him to perform. What this means, what it changes, what it costs to absorb it and keep moving. Whether keeping moving is still possible, and whether the answer to that question is something he decides or something he discovers. He picks it up, looks at it one more time, sets it in the trash, then he washes his hands and goes to make breakfast. This is not numbness. Kale wants to be precise about that, at least in his own mind, in the private account he keeps of who he is when no one is watching. It is not numbness, and it is not denial, and it is not the kind of functional performance that comes from not feeling anything. It is the opposite. It is feeling everything and understanding that the feeling does not change the situation, that the situation requires decisions rather than reactions, and that decisions made from a state of reaction rarely hold under pressure. He knows this. He has always known this. It is possibly the most exhausting thing about being himself. He makes eggs. He sits at the counter. He eats them, then he opens his laptop and begins restructuring his financial plan for a single parent of 1 additional child. That is what the next 8 months look like from the inside. Adjustments, recalibrations, a leaner business operation during the 3rd trimester, which means picking up the output in the 1st and 2nd. An investment in the silver position he has been watching for months. A small, precise entry point that his research has been pointing toward for long enough that it now feels overdue. A quiet expansion of his cryptocurrency holding, not aggressive, not speculative, the kind of measured addition that compounds slowly and requires patience, that most people do not have but that Kale has because patience is the thing he has the most of, because patience is what running from something teaches you faster than anything else. He does not look for Rick's cauldron. He makes one decision about that, and he makes it early, and he does not revisit it. A man who controls shipping routes through the New Jersey ports and owns logistics networks through Texas, and has a known presence in the silver and crypto markets. A man whose name, Kale discovers in exactly 1 hour of research one afternoon, exists in a category of power that people like Kale do not intersect with, should not have intersected with only because of a single event at a borrowed shoes gala on a November night that was not supposed to lead anywhere. That man does not need to know. The information would not go to him as news, it would go to him as leverage. It would go to him as a claim, a resource, a point of contact with Kale's life that Kale would then have no mechanism to close. He does not contact Rick's. He does not register a father on either birth certificate. He names his boys Zion Emery Riven and Malik Cassius Riven, and he brings them home to his Brooklyn apartment, and the bakery goes on hold for 11 weeks, and then comes back online, and the financial plan holds, and the silver position ages, and the years begin to compound the way good decisions do when you make enough of them in the same direction. He thinks sometimes in the particular quiet of early morning when the boys are still asleep, and the kitchen is his alone, and the city outside is not yet fully awake. He thinks about what Rick's cauldron's life looks like right now, not from longing. He is honest enough with himself to keep that distinction clean. He thinks about it the way you think about a weather system in a part of the country you used to live in, with a certain removed awareness, a recognition that it still exists, that it is still moving, that it has no idea you are watching its forecast from a distance. Rick's does not know Kale exists. Rick's does not know the November night produced anything beyond itself. Rick's is somewhere in a glass-walled boardroom in Manhattan, or a private terminal at Newark Liberty, or a car moving through Houston, doing the things powerful men do with the complete and total absence of awareness, that in a Brooklyn apartment a man he met once is raising 2 boys with his eyes. That is the plan. That is the structure. That is what safety looks like when you build it correctly and maintain it carefully and never let the details slip. He thinks it is enough. He thinks it is airtight. He is now pregnant again, new situation, different circumstances, no new variables that compromise the architecture of what he has built. And he has been pregnant before and he has managed before, and the financial position is significantly stronger now than it was the first time. He is older, more stable. Maury practiced in the exact art of absorbing a new complexity and redistributing the weight across the structure without letting the structure flex. He tells himself this on the night he starts the new ganache, while the twins are on the couch behind him, while the tablet is propped on the throw pillow, while the broadcast runs at low volume in the living room. He tells himself this: safety is not a feeling, it is a structure. You build it and you maintain it, and you do not let anyone close enough to test the foundation. And if you do that consistently and correctly, if you give no one the information that could be used to find you, if you leave no digital thread that leads back to where you actually are, if you keep yourself small and successful and invisible in exactly the right proportions, then no one can find the door. He believes this fully and completely and without reservation. On a Tuesday night in November, 5 years after he walked out of a Manhattan building in borrowed shoes at 4 a.m, and made a decision that he has maintained through 2 pregnancies and 7 years of disciplined silence, right up until the moment it stops being true, because safety is not real when the person you have been hiding from owns the system. And Kale is about to find that out in the most irreversible way a person can find anything out, not through warning, not through choice, not through the gradual erosion of a secret, but all at once in a single moment, in a way that leaves no version of before to go back to. The screen goes black for exactly 1 second, then it loads, and it is not the broadcast feed. It is not a filtered customer line. It is not any of the reasonable destinations a call button on a public livestream interface should connect to. It is a direct window, a clean, high-resolution, full-screen connection, opening onto a room that Kale recognizes before he has named why he recognizes it: dark walls, long table, glass on every side looking out over Midtown at night, the Manhattan skyline arranged behind the room like something that was always supposed to be there. The broadcast Kale had been watching a minute ago is now the small inset window in the bottom corner of this screen, the room reduced to a thumbnail. Because the screen is not showing a broadcast anymore, the screen is showing a live call, and it is connected. Kale stops walking in the middle of the living room floor. His hand is still reaching forward toward the couch, toward the tablet, toward the 3 feet of distance he did not cross fast enough. His whole body goes still in the particular way that bodies go still when the brain is processing something too large to absorb in a single step. The way everything pauses while the system catches up to what the eyes are already telling it on the screen. In that boardroom, everything has stopped. Not the way things stop when a meeting is interrupted. Not the polite recalibration of professionals adjusting to a new item on the agenda. The way things stop when a room full of powerful people suddenly and collectively understand that something is happening that none of them have the framework to categorize. 3 advisors in dark suits who were taking notes are no longer taking notes. The financial anchor from the broadcast is visible in the corner inset, still narrating to an audience that no longer has the full frame, unaware that the man she was interviewing has stopped answering her questions entirely because Rick's cauldron has turned. Not toward a door, not toward an assistant entering the room, toward the screen, toward the call, toward the 2 small faces now filling the display of the tablet in a Brooklyn apartment, backlit by the warm glow of a throw pillow lamp, looking back at him with wide eyes and the specific expression of children who have done something they are not entirely sure was allowed and are now waiting to find out which way it lands. Zion waves. He does it the way he does everything, completely, without hesitation, with the full open confidence of a child who has never been given a reason to be embarrassed about what he is. He raises one small hand and waves at the man on the screen the way you wave at someone through a window on the street. Natural, unhurried. Malik does not wave. Malik looks, the careful, exact, going too deep look that he brings to everything he wants to understand. He looks at Rix the way he looked at the electrical outlet at age 2, before Kale had finished installing the childproof cover, with the complete attention of a person preparing to understand something before it has been explained. The room on the screen is absolutely silent. Rick's cauldron does not move. He sits at the head of that table, and he looks at the screen, and Kale can see, even from across the living room, even through the small tablet display, even at this distance and this angle, he can see the exact moment it lands. It does not land slowly. It does not require processing time. It lands the way things land when they confirm something a body already suspected, immediately, completely, without the need for evidence, because the evidence is not information arriving from outside. The evidence is recognition arriving from inside. The kind of knowing that bypasses the analytical mind and goes straight to something older and less arguable. Rix looks at those 2 small faces on the screen, and he knows. Kale is moving before the thought is complete, crossing the living room, hand reaching for the tablet. Every system in his body firing at once, adrenaline, muscle memory, the 5 years of contingency planning that lives below conscious thought in the part of him that has been maintaining this specific exit since the day the first test came back positive. He is fast, he is focused. He has run the scenario of a moment like this in his mind more times than he can count, and in every version of it, he moves and he closes the connection, and he buys himself time, and time is what he needs right now. Time is the only currency that matters in this exact moment. His hand closes on the tablet. He lifts it off the pillow. On the screen, for one fraction of a second, one single moment that lasts the full weight of 5 years compressed into a breath, Rick's cauldron's eyes move from the twins and find Kale. Not the twins anymore, Kale. Those pale amber eyes, silver at the outer edge, the eyes that Kale has not looked at directly in 5 years, and that have not faded in 5 years, and that are now looking at him through a screen in his own living room with an expression that is not anger, is not surprise, is not the loud reaction of a man who has been blindsided. It is something quieter, controlled. The expression of a man whose entire system has just received the information it has been working toward, and is now, calmly and completely, reorganizing around it. Kale ends the call. The screen goes black. The living room is so quiet he can hear the gas burner on the stove still running in the kitchen. He can hear his boys breathing. He can hear the city outside the window doing the ordinary thing it always does, indifferent, continuous, completely unbothered by the fact that his entire life just changed in the span of 45 seconds. Zion looks up at him. Was he asleep, Papa? He had quiet eyes. Kale does not answer. His hands are not shaking. He has too much discipline for that. But there is a cold running through his chest that is not temperature, that is not air conditioning. That is the specific cold of a man who has just looked at his own blind spot and found it was never actually a blind spot. It was always visible. It was always right there. He was just the only one who could not see it. He sets the tablet face down on the couch, picks up Malik, holds him against his chest for 1 full second longer than usual, and then sets him down and picks up Zion and holds him the same way. Then he puts both boys through their bedtime routine, teeth, water, the story they have been rotating through for 3 weeks, lights, and he does it with the same practiced steadiness he brings to everything, the machine that does not show its own cracking. He tucks them in, closes the door, stands in the hallway, processes. He has a list in his mind within 30 seconds. It is the list of someone who has spent 5 years preparing for a version of this moment, even while convincing himself the moment was never going to come. He will need to move the tablet off the home network. He will need to change the business contact number by morning. He will need to check what information is attached to the bakery's public-facing registration and close every access point that leads to a physical address. He will need to think about relocation, not panic relocation, not the kind that draws attention, but the kind of quiet, strategic repositioning that a man with his financial structure can execute without anyone noticing until it is done. Texas, Alaska, somewhere with a distance that buys time. He has options. He has resources. He has 5 years of preparation and a financial position that most people in his situation would not have. He can do this. He has always been able to do this. This is what the whole structure was built for. He goes to the kitchen, takes the ganache off the stove, sets the saucepan aside, stands at the counter in the quiet and makes himself breathe. His phone is face down on the counter next to the prep station. He does not look at it for 11 minutes, then he picks it up. There is one message. No name attached to the number, no introduction, no context. The kind of message that does not need any of those things because the person sending it operates in a world where the message itself is the full vocabulary of power, where the absence of elaboration is not a gap in communication but the communication itself. The message says exactly what it needs to say and nothing beyond it. 4 words. Cale reads them once. He does not read them again because he does not need to. They are already in him. They are already the only thing in the room. He stands in his kitchen in Brooklyn at 11:59 at night, 31 weeks pregnant, both hands flat on the cold marble counter, and he understands with his whole body what those 4 words mean. Not just the instruction in them, the architecture of them, the certainty, the complete and total absence of question, because in those 4 words there is no threat, there is no anger. There is no performance of dominance by a man who needs to demonstrate it. There is only the quiet, absolute authority of a man who has already decided, out of every number in existence. Out of every broadcast on every platform on every device in every city. 2 small boys pressed a button on a Tuesday night, and they called the one line that was never supposed to ring. The boardroom does not move for 11 seconds after the call ends. Not one person at that table reaches for a phone. Not one advisor leans toward another to whisper. Not one assistant moves toward the door to excuse themselves from whatever just happened on that screen. 11 seconds of complete, held stillness from a room full of people who are paid very well to maintain composure under pressure. And not one of them can locate their composure right now, because not one of them has the vocabulary for what they just watched their employer experience. Rick's cauldron has not moved from his chair. He is sitting exactly where he was sitting before the call connected, back straight, one hand flat on the table surface, the other resting at the edge with the Hermes leather band catching the low boardroom light, and he looks exactly the way he looked 30 seconds ago, except that everything about him is different now. Not visibly different. Not in a way that anyone in this room could point to and describe in clear language if asked. But the people in this room have worked for Ricks long enough to know the difference between stillness as a default state and stillness as a pressure system. They know what it looks like when he is doing nothing, and they know what it looks like when he is doing nothing, because doing nothing is the most controlled response available to him, and right now, in this room at this table, what is happening is the second one. He looks at the screen where 2 small faces were visible 4 seconds ago. Green is black now, call ended, feed closed. The broadcast has resumed in full frame, the financial anchor continuing her segment with the complete obliviousness of someone who does not know her interview subject is no longer in the same conversation he was in 60 seconds ago. The room is back to the broadcast. The broadcast is back to normal. Everything on the surface has returned to its original arrangement. Nothing underneath the surface has. Rick stands, the room adjusts, not loudly. The particular quiet adjustment of a space rearranging itself around a shift in the weight it is carrying, chairs angling slightly, attention redirecting. The whole room tracking him without appearing to track him, because that is the only way to watch a man like Rick's cauldron, without him noticing, and no one in this room wants him to notice them right now. His lead advisor, a man named Corvin Steele who has worked alongside Ricks for 9 years, and has developed in that time a very specific competence for reading the room when the room is Ricks's internal state. Corvin opens his mouth, closes it, and decides against whatever he was about to say. Good instinct. Ricks walks to the window. Midtown at night laid out below him, the grid of it, the scale of it, the particular quality of Manhattan after dark when it becomes less a city and more a system. All the pieces of it running their individual functions inside a structure, so vast that no single person can hold all of it in their mind at once. He has stood at windows like this one more times than he can count and looked at the city the way a person looks at something they are responsible for but do not own, and it has never looked the way it looks right now. What just happened on that screen was not a business interruption. He knows what he saw. He does not need time to process it, and he does not need a second opinion, and he does not need DNA, which is something his legal team is going to suggest within the next 24 hours, and which he is going to acknowledge with the appropriate professional gravity, and underneath that acknowledgement hold the private, absolute certainty of a man who does not require the test because the test is not the knowing. The knowing already happened. It happened in the first 2 seconds of that call when 2 small faces filled the screen, and something in his chest registered a frequency he has never felt before in his life. Not heard, not seen, felt, the way you feel a change in air pressure before you hear the thunder, and said without words and without room for argument, "Those are mine." The eyes were part of it. He is not naive about that. His eyes in those faces, unmistakable, the particular pale amber going to silver at the edge that his own mother used to say skipped generations, and then doubled down, looking back at him from a tablet screen in a location he has not identified yet. The eyes were the confirmation, but the recognition came before the eyes. The recognition came the moment the call connected, before he could even fully see the screen, in the room frequency change that his body processed before his vision could. "Ends from the window. Clear the room," he says. His voice is exactly the same as it always is. Low, even, the same weight it carries in every room it enters. Not louder than usual, not harder than usual. The room empties in 40 seconds because it has learned over years that the quieter this voice gets, the faster the room should move. Corvin is the last one to the door. Corvin, one word. Corvin stops, does not turn around. The broadcast feed from tonight, the live stream interface. "I need the origin data on the device that connected to the private line." A pause. Then, "Yes, sir, tonight." Door closes. Rick stands alone in the boardroom with the Manhattan skyline behind him and the empty table in front of him, and the full weight of what just shifted pressing into the room the way where the presses into a space before it breaks. He has built entire logistics networks from zero. He has navigated federal investigations and hostile acquisitions, and the particular kind of pressure that belongs to powerful men who decided he was accessible enough to test. He has never, in all of it, felt the thing that is currently moving through him, not fear, not anger, the specific feeling of a missing piece arriving. The specific, quiet devastation of understanding that something was taken from you before you knew it existed to be taken, and that somewhere in a city that is right now running its ordinary Tuesday night, two small boys with his eyes and his blood are sleeping in a bed he does not know the location of yet. Yet he did not need DNA. He already knew. The question that arrives next is not whether. It is never whether. The question is where and who taught them to call. The message leaves Rick's phone at 12:14 in the morning. He does not draft it. He does not reconsider the wording. He does not pass it through his legal team or his communications advisor or any of the people he employs specifically to place a deliberate layer between his intentions and their execution when the situation calls for it. He types it himself directly from the private line, the same private line that received the call 45 minutes ago, the same number that has existed in a sealed digital compartment for years, accessible to exactly 4 people in the world, 3 of whom are inside his organization, and one of whom is now somewhere in Brooklyn, holding a tablet with his number still in its call history. 4 words, he sends it. Then he sits back in the chair and sets the phone face up on the table and waits. He is not waiting for a response. He is not waiting for Cale to answer the message or call back or send anything. He is waiting because what he has just sent requires a certain kind of time to land, not the time of delivery, which is instantaneous, but the time of understanding, which is different, which moves at the pace of a person reading 4 words and feeling the full weight of what they mean pressed down through every layer of the life they have built on top of the assumption that this moment was never coming. He is giving Cale that time, not from mercy, from precision. From the understanding, developed over years of operating in rooms where power negotiates with itself, that the most effective dominance is never the kind that announces itself at volume, the kind that arrives quietly, that gives the other person exactly enough time to understand the full scope of the situation, and then waits. The waiting is not passive. The waiting is the active part. The waiting is what communicates, more clearly than any threat could, that there is no version of this situation in which the outcome changes. Cale is smart. Rix knew that in the first 20 minutes of the first conversation they ever had. He knew it the way he knows things about people quickly, not from what they say but from how they listen, what they reach for, where they pause before they answer. Cale listens like a person who is already 3 steps ahead and is choosing which step to let you see. Cale reaches for precision when other people reach for comfort. Cale pauses in the places where a person who is managing their own intelligence pauses, not because they are unsure, but because they are deciding how much of what they know to let into the room. He remembered him. That is the thing he has not said out loud to anyone, not Corvin, not anyone in the building, not anyone in the orbit of his life that has continued normally for 5 years while this particular thread went unresolved in the very back of him. He remembered Cale. Not as a name, he did not have a name. Not as a contact, there was no number, no trace. But the memory of a night in November that was unlike every other night in November, that had a quality of realness to it that the rest of that year did not quite match, that produced in him, in the weeks following, a specific kind of searching that he had eventually filed and covered over with the ordinary demands of a life that does not stop for things it cannot locate. He remembered. He had set that memory aside because a memory without a coordinate is not actionable. You cannot look for someone who does not want to be found. You cannot trace a thread that was cut at both ends. You can only move forward and carry the weight of it as a given, the permanent, low-level weight of the thing you cannot resolve pressing into the back of everything else you do without ever being loud enough to stop you from doing it. Until tonight. Tonight, a weight 5 years old became a coordinate. He picks up his phone. opens a different line. One of his people is already working on the origin data from the call, device registration, network address, the chain of digital information that connects a tablet screen to a physical address in Brooklyn. They will have it within the hour. They are good at this. They are paid to be good at this, and they are good at more than they are paid for, which is the specific quality Rick selects for when he builds a team. He does not need to manage the logistics of finding Kale. His people will do that. What he needs to do right now, alone in this boardroom at 12:20 in the morning, is understand what he is moving toward and how, because this is not a recovery of property. Rix is precise about that in his own mind right now before any other conversation happens about it. His children are not property. His connection to them is not a legal filing or a financial claim or a piece of leverage in a larger structure. What happened on that call tonight was not a business development. It was his son's faces on a screen and the confirmation of a loss he did not know he had sustained until 45 minutes ago. The way he moves from here matters, and Kale's fear matters less to him than Kale's cooperation, which means the way the message was worded, 4 words, no warmth, no softening, was calculated, not to terrify, to establish, to make clear in the most efficient possible language that the chapter of this story where Kale had the only information is over. The new chapter has a different balance. In Rix's world, heirs are not just family. That is what the people in his world say, and they are not wrong. There is a structural reality to what his bloodline means in the context of what he has built, the networks, the assets, the particular kind of power that accrues to a man like him over a long enough timeline, and that requires, at some point, a direction to flow. His heirs inherit that. His heirs become the living argument for everything he has built mattering beyond his own lifespan, but that is not why his chest is doing what it is doing right now. His chest is doing what it is doing because 2 small boys waved at him through a screen, because one of them was careful and exact and looked at him the way Rix himself looks at a room he is trying to understand before he enters it. Because the other one waved with the complete, open confidence of a child who has never been given a reason to be afraid of what he is. Those are his sons. And Kale had them for 5 years. It was not a threat. That is what made it worse. Kale reads the 4 words 11 times. He reads them standing at the kitchen counter with the phone in both hands and his lower back pressed against the cabinet edge and the ganache still sitting cold in the saucepan on the stove. He reads them until they stop being language and start being architecture, until they become the shape of the situation rather than a sentence inside it. Then he sets the phone down and walks to the window and looks out at the street below and thinks. He is good at thinking under pressure. He has had to be. And he has thought about this specific scenario more than he has ever admitted to himself. He has run the version of this night in his mind more times than he can count, has mapped the exits, has identified the variables, has stress-tested every component of the structure he has built against the specific weight of this exact moment. He has done this the way an engineer designs a bridge, not because he believes it will fail, but because he needs to know exactly how much it can hold before it does. The structure is holding. He tells himself this. He tells himself this with the same clean authority he tells himself everything, not loud, not repeated, not requiring agreement from any other source. The structure is holding. He has resources. He has options. He has a financial position that allows for movement, for relocation, for the kind of quiet repositioning that leaves no thread to pull. He has done it before on a smaller scale. He has restructured his life under pressure before, and the result was this: the apartment, the business, the boys, the years of compounded stability. He can do it again. He starts making the list. Alaska sits at the top of it: distance, climate, reduced network density, the kind of geographic removal that makes physical location difficult even for people with significant resources. He has looked at property in Juneau before, during a late-night research session 2 years ago when something in the news about Rick's Cauldron's expanding logistics footprint had activated the contingency part of his brain and sent him down a planning thread he eventually filed and did not return to. He knows the market there. He knows the cost of entry. He knows what his financial position can support. Texas is on the list too. Houston, West Side, far enough from the ports and the logistics corridors that Rick's controls to be outside the daily operational geography. A property under business entity name rather than a personal name. A new account for the bakery operation under subsidiary. Not impossible. Not even particularly difficult for someone with Kale's organizational capability and financial literacy. He has always known, in the back of the part of him that plans for things he publicly tells himself will never happen, that if the moment came, he would be able to move. He starts cross-referencing flight options in his head. Early morning departure, JFK or Newark. Boys out of school for the rest of the week. He will handle the school contact himself, the usual emergency family travel explanation, the kind of absence explanation that schools accept without escalating. He will pack light. He will pack only what matters. He will leave the bakery in a 30-day pause. He has done this before for maternity preparation. The client relationships can hold, and he will reach his destination and establish the new layer of the structure from there. He has time. That is what he tells himself standing at the window. He has 3 hours until a reasonable departure window. He has the resources to execute. He has the plan. He has done harder things than this and landed on his feet, and this, for all its weight, is not harder than raising twins alone from birth while building a business from a market stall on Saturday mornings. He has survived things that would have stopped other people entirely, and the common thread through all of it is this. He plans, he moves. He does not wait for the situation to close around him. He is not waiting. He pushes off the window and goes to the bedroom. Pulls the carry-on from the top shelf of the closet, the one he keeps packed with the basics, always, because being someone who is prepared to leave at any time is a habit he formed early and has never broken. He sets it on the bed and opens the top to check the contents. Documents, backup cards, the emergency account information on a folded paper he replaces every 6 months, the boys' passports that he had processed 2 years ago on instinct and told himself were for travel purposes, the small folded envelope of cash in 3 denominations. All there, all exactly where he put them. The machine works. He goes to the boys' room and gets their bag from under Malik's bed, same setup, kid-sized, the overnight bag that is always ready, always current. He stands in the doorway for a moment and looks at them sleeping. Zion flat on his back with one arm thrown out. Malik curled on his side with both hands tucked under his chin, the exact sleeping position of a person who even unconsciously is keeping something close and protected. He thinks of the 4 words on his phone. He thinks of Rix's face on that screen, not the face of the broadcast, not the polished, boardroom-framed authority of a man performing power for an audience. The face in the second before Cale ended the call. The face after the recognition landed. The still, controlled, unmistakable expression of a man who has just understood something and is already, very quietly, deciding what to do with it. Cale pulls the boy's bag strap over his shoulder. He goes back to the kitchen, picks up his phone. Checks the time, checks the flight options he has already been mapping in his head. 2 seats available on the 5:45 to Seattle with a connection that puts him in Juneau by mid-afternoon. That works. That is enough distance to create the gap he needs to think, to plan the next layer, to get the boys settled and the structure relocated before anything can close around him. He thinks he has time. He books the tickets. He sets the phone on the counter and starts moving through the apartment with the practiced efficiency of a man who has done this in his mind so many times that the physical execution of it feels less like action and more like muscle memory catching up to a decision that was always made. He does not look at his phone again for 22 minutes. When he does, there is a second message from the same number. It is not 4 words this time. It is shorter. It says, "I know about the flight." Cale stands in the kitchen with both hands flat on the counter, and the full, cold, arriving weight of a truth he has been refusing to receive pressing into him from every direction at once. Not loud, not with any performance of dominance or anger or threat, just that 7 words. And in those 7 words is the complete and total collapse of the belief he has been living inside for 5 years. The belief that distance was protection. The belief that silence was armor. The belief that a man who controls ports and logistics networks and silver markets, and enough infrastructure to run a small country, would not have also the capability to see through every careful layer of a life built to be invisible. He thought he had time, but time was the one thing Rix already owned. The cars arrive at 6:17 in the morning and they do not make a sound, no engine noise, no door slam, no voice. Cale is standing at the kitchen window with his carry-on by the front door and the boy's bag on top of it, and both sons asleep in their room with their coats already on, because he was going to wake them in 8 minutes for the car he called 40 minutes ago. The car that is now not coming because when he opened his rideshare app 3 minutes ago the booking had been quietly, cleanly, without explanation, cancelled. He did not call a new one. He knew. He is standing at the kitchen window drinking water he is not tasting when the first black Tesla SUV rolls to a stop in front of his building. Matte black. No plates that mean anything to a civilian eye. Then a second one. Then a third, parking at the far end of the block with the particular precision of vehicles that have been deployed rather than driven, arranged rather than parked, covering the geometry of the street with a thoroughness that leaves no version of the front exit unaccounted for. No one gets out immediately. That is the part Cale will remember. Not the cars, not the number of them. The fact that no one rushes. No door opens in a hurry. No one comes to the front of the building at a pace that suggests urgency or aggression or any of the things that Cale's body was prepared for, that his adrenaline had been building toward for 6 hours. There is just the presence. The cars, still and black in the early morning light, sitting in front of his building the way a fact sits in a room, not requiring acknowledgement, not asking for a response, simply existing in a way that changes the nature of every other thing present. Cale steps back from the window. He looks at the front door, looks at the bags. Looks down the hallway toward his boys' room where Zion and Malik are asleep in their coats, breathing the slow, even breath of children who do not yet know the shape of the morning they are about to wake into. His phone buzzes. He looks at the screen, a number he does not recognize, not the private line, a different number, clean and local, and when he reads the message it says only, "The building's rear exit is also covered. This is not to frighten you. Come down when you are ready. We will wait." He reads that last sentence 3 times. We will wait, not we are coming up, not you have 30 seconds. Not any of the language that belongs to force or urgency or the performance of power that needs to be heard to be believed. We will wait. The patience of a man who is certain about the outcome and therefore has no need to hurry toward it. The particular quality of authority that does not need noise because noise is for people who are not sure they have one. Kale knows what is standing in front of his building. He sets his phone down on the counter, walks to the hallway, stands in the doorway of his boys' room and looks at them. Zion's arm thrown wide, Malik curled close, both of them warm inside their small coats, entirely safe in the only way that has ever mattered, the way of not knowing yet. He looks at his sons for a long time, long enough to feel everything he has been running from and carrying and building against settle fully into the room around him. Then he straightens, goes to the front door, picks up both bags, and waits for his sons to wake up. No one knocked, because they did not need permission. Rix is already standing in the lobby when Kale comes through the stairwell door, not outside, inside. Standing in the lobby of a Brooklyn apartment building at 6:15 in the morning in a dark coat over a dark suit. No tie, one wrist carrying the Hermes leather band, looking exactly the way he looked on the broadcast screen, and exactly the way he looked in a Grand Hyatt ballroom 6 years ago, and exactly the way he has looked in Kale's memory for every day of the 5 years between then and now. Like a man who occupies whatever space he enters rather than simply standing inside it. 2 men are positioned behind him at a distance that is professional and unobtrusive, and makes the lobby feel half the size it actually is. No one else in the building is awake yet. Kale comes through the door and stops. He has Zion on his left side, his hand wrapped in his son's hand, and Malik on his right, tucked close against his leg with his small fist gripping the fabric of Kale's coat the way Malik grips things when a room is asking more of him than he has decided to give it yet. The carry-on is on Kale's back. The boy's bag is across his shoulder. He is 31 weeks pregnant, and he has not slept, and he is still, even now, even here, carrying himself with the particular uprightness of a person who will not be the first one to look away. He does not look away. Rix does not move. For 4 full seconds they stand in that lobby and look at each other across the distance, that 6 years and 2 children and 5 years of silence, and 4 words on a phone, and a Tuesday night in November, and a borrowed shoes gala, and one night that was never supposed to compound, all of it have created between them. The full weight of all of it is in the room and neither of them looks away from it, and neither of them says anything, and the lobby holds the whole thing in a silence that is not empty. Full. It is the fullest silence Kale has stood inside in 6 years. Then Zion looks up. He looks at Rix the way he looked at him through the tablet screen, with the complete open recognition of a child whose body already has the answer even when his brain is still forming the question. He tips his head. He looks at Rix's face. He looks at his eyes. Then he looks up at Kale, then back at Rix. He says nothing. He lets go of Kale's hand, takes 4 steps across the lobby floor, and stands in front of Rix, and just looks at him. Rix goes very still. A particular stillness that is not control over a reaction, but the presence of something so deep and complete that the body does not have a surface response for it. The stillness of a man who has not once in his life been unable to manage whatever the room presented to him, and who is now, quietly, in a lobby in Brooklyn at 6 in the morning, standing in front of a 5-year-old who shares his eyes and his blood and his particular quality of looking at a room before deciding what to do with it. And cannot find the management. He crouches down, one knee on the lobby floor, the dark coat spreading out around him, eye level with Zion, and up close at this distance the match is not something you analyze. It is something you see, the same jaw, the same eyes, the same quality of complete presence that the people in Rix's boardroom have spent years trying to describe in language that never quite covers it. Zion studies him, then says in the careful exact voice that Kale has heard his whole life and never once been able to trace back to its source without following the thread all the way to this lobby, this morning, this man. Are you the one who's been looking for us? Rix looks at his son. 3 seconds then. Yes. Behind Zion, Malik has crossed the floor too, standing at his brother's shoulder, not reaching out, not closing the distance further. Just present in the way that Malik is always present, watchful, measuring, waiting to understand before committing. He looks at Rix for a long time with those going too deep 5-year-old eyes, then he looks back at Kale. And Kale is standing at the stairwell door with one hand on the frame, and 31 weeks of pregnancy, and 5 years of wait, and the full precise cost of every decision he has ever made pressing into him from every direction. And his boys are crossing the floor of his Brooklyn lobby toward a man they have never met, and they are doing it without fear, and they are doing it because their bodies told them to, the same way bodies always know the things they were made to know before anyone teaches them anything. He watches his sons. He does not move. Rix rises from the crouch. He does not look at Kale with anger. He does not look at Kale with the loud, performed authority of a man who needs the room to understand he has won. He looks at Kale with something that has more weight than anger and more permanence than victory. The look of a man standing at the end of a 5-year distance and understanding the full shape of what that distance cost. Both of them. I'm not here to take them from you, Rick says. His voice is exactly the same. Low, even, the gravity of it filling the lobby without needing the volume. I'm here because they're mine too, and because you have always known that this was the only way this ever ended. Kale looks at him across the lobby. He looks at his boys standing between them, those silver-amber eyes going back and forth, Zion already curious and Malik already thinking, and both of them already in the process of building a new understanding of their own shape in the world. He looks at the man who could have used power and used presence instead. He looks at the life he built, the ganache and the croissants and the Carroll Gardens property and the silver position and the bakery boxes and the sleepless nights and the borrowed shoes memory and the 6-year wait of a single November night, and what it cost him to carry it as far as he carried it. He breathes. Going to have to earn it, Kale says, steady, clean, not soft and not hard. The voice of a man who has survived everything he has survived, and is still, even now, the one making the terms. Rix looks at him for one long moment, and for the first time since the night they met in a grand Hyatt ballroom when the room rearranged itself around his arrival, Rick's cauldron almost smiles. The life Kale built to survive being forgotten was the same life that proved he was never replaceable. And if this story hit something real in you, if you felt every second of what Kale carried, and what it costs to build a life on silence and survive it, then subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications so you do not miss a single story that is coming. Every story on this channel is built for people who understand that strength is not the absence of fear. It is what you build while you are afraid. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us what you felt in that lobby, because your words inspire more people than you know. We will see you in the next one.